we wanted to start a run that leaned heavily into the religious convocation power block. The problem? No country at the game start actually has the best religion. The religion with the two best IG bonuses is Jewish, with the Yeshivat and the Best Revenge, which give 10% education access and minus 2.5% mortality respectively, which double when the devout are powerful. Well, how do we get such a kosher religion? The only Jewish country is Israel, which requires the pan-nationalism tech to release. Now, there were some concerns in playing Israel, in that it might be seen as an endorsement, or that saying it was not an endorsement might be seen as a condemnation, or that we might make one too many dry and dark humor joke that might be taken out of context. Shout out to drugs. But I figured that people would be reasonable enough to be able to recognize this as trying to play with a unique religion that most people don't even realize is in Victoria 3, and not a geopolitical statement regarding the ongoing events in the Middle East. So we asked a modder to make a mod that made Israel playable at game start and do nothing else. Given the comment that the modder got within the first 10 minutes of posting their mod, however, it became apparent that the comment section would be unlikely able to handle an Israel run. So instead we searched for a country that would be reasonable to make Jewish, so that we could still do a religious convocation run with the Jewish religion. And, much to my surprise, I found a plan for the alliterative Jewish Japan. Was it a plausible plan? With a deep history and cultural tradition that didn't take anything out of context at all, whatsoever? Absolutely. And, if we know anything, it's that viewers love Japan content, so it seemed like the perfect fit. Now, before we go into explaining the Japan start, I did want to focus in on some of the aspects of being both Jewish and doing a religious convocation that would make this run a little bit unique and kind of themes and ideas to look at over time. The first one is we will be going divine economics, which will give plus 25% wages for state religion pops. We will also be getting additional wages for state religion slash state accepted pops in going racial segregation, which we will do so we can better accept Han pops, which will give us plus 15% wages for the full acceptance and plus 5% for second-class citizens. So we're up to, at this point, plus 40% wages, but we will also be going for state religion, which will give us plus 10% wages for state religion pops for a total of plus 50% wages. Now, this wages multiplier is kind of both a good thing and a bad thing, because whenever you have a building that produces value in Victoria 3, part of the value goes to the balance and part of the value goes to wages. In theory, sending more money to wages has a positive effect because generally your dividends are going to be subjected to bonuses like laissez-faire's capitalist investment pool contribution modifier, which produces free money as long as you have money flowing into the dividends. However, wages allow you to do something else. Wages generally allow you to pump up the tax rate, because being over minimum expected standard of living is an important thing in Victoria 3, because otherwise you generate a ton of radicals. Having high wages generally lets you stay above minimum expected standard of living much easier, even as you raise the taxation level. And so this is going to provide you with kind of a mixed bag sort of thing, but since we are going and stacking high wages, we will be looking to exploit that through being able to operate higher taxes without passing, some laws like homesteading, which otherwise is pretty good for allowing you to high tax through the peasants. But also, it makes another mechanic pretty good in Victoria 3, because when you sell a building to foreign investment, they get the weekly balance. They don't get the wages stay at home. So the bigger and more inflated your wages are, the better selling for an investment becomes, because so much of the value is being caught up in the wages rather than the foreign investment. So when they buy a building, they are buying a smaller proportion of the building's value because more money is going into the wages. And so in this way, we are going to also look to exploit allowing foreign investment. And by exploit, I mean foreign investment's not very good anyways, and so it's not really exploiting, but we're going to look to lean into it, even though the game, it's not as strong in game. One of the things that we've changed in terms of modding, we will have the description below. We are using a mod that shows GDP ownership, both the percentage of our own GDP that we own and the percentage of the abroad GDP, but this is going to be useful for that front. We are also going to lean in and perhaps intentionally force bankruptcies because bankruptcies negatively affect the people who own the buildings. If we don't own our own buildings, then going bankrupt isn't really a bad problem at all. So this is another thing that we might lead into. And finally, we might also lead into going for the forced nationalization war goal, which is normally not that good, but if you sell off 50% of your economy and then you just get it back through war, that's free value, and this is a way in which you could produce money through utilizing foreign investment. The Yejavat IG bonus pairs in a very, very explosive way with the Terioka system. Once we have them powerful with the devout, we will get 20% education access. Then on top of that, the Terakoya system will give 25% education access and 20% education access for peasants. So focusing in on peasants here, that's 65% on peasants. Most of our population at this juncture is in fact peasants. And then on top of that, we could use decrees to get up to 90% education access for those peasants, with 20% less for our general population. And then finally, not even including the wealth education access that we get from technology, we can add on religious schools just one level and get our peasants up to 100%, which represents an enormous amount of literacy. Now, this is paired with the Terakoya system having drawbacks with the minus 10% technology research speed, and so overall in the aggregate this isn't necessarily worth it. However, you can push 100% education access on the peasants very quickly, 80% not on the peasants, and then if you get the schooling system up a few levels, you will be able to do quite a lot. Also, the best revenge kind of pairs quite nicely with the fact that we are an East Asian country that features a large amount of population. Rather than going for migration, we are going to lean into pop growth, and this is an excellent modifier for that. It's also important that we're not leaning into migration because the higher and more discriminatory you are, which we're planning to be a little bit discriminatory, the harder it is to get migrants, and so leaning into pop growth plays quite nicely. We're going to look to stack modifiers and then take a bunch of Qing states as part of a greater Japanese empire in order to apply those modifiers. And so we're going to be applying, not limited to, but modifiers like food standardization 3, which incidentally gives plus standard of living, which is going to be even better for running those high taxes, and also plus agriculture throughput. We'll get into that in a second. That is a very strong modifier for us, especially in the early game, and this minus 10% mortality. We will also be looking to go for public health system, which is going to give us at max level minus 25% mortality, but more realistically at level 4, minus 20% mortality, and we will be able to better afford this because we will be leaning into the religion and paying slightly less bureaucracy cost on our religious schools. We're not really that concerned that the public schools provide more education access and we're not going them because we're getting 20% education access as a result of our religion. So even if you add it all together, 5 levels of this for 50% education access and 5 levels of this for a little bit more, you end up on top with the Jewish devout because you will have more total education access when you add it all together. Beyond the Terakoya system, we also have the flavor of the Honorable Restoration. Completing this entire journal entry chain is going to be largely the objective that we have here today. Kind of playing solid but standard, we need to weaken the Shogunate. Now, the reward for completing this is mostly, or the big parts of the reward are claims in Manchuria and Korea, and also gaining access to some very, very strong, unique companies for Japan that specifically require that we complete the Honorable Restoration journal entry. So that's going to be Mitsui and also the South Manchuria Railway Company, which we need a little bit of territory in here to unlock. I know what you're saying, Mitsubishi, that sounds Japanese, and it is, and it does require completing the Honorable Restoration. However, that is not a good company, so we did not really include that in our 2-company list of Mitsui and also the South Manchuria Railway Company. Japan will also have a couple of unique interest groups. They will have the uniquely named Shogunate, which is otherwise normal. We have re-rolled our start repeatedly in order to make sure that we have a traditionalist on the Shogunate because he supports state religion, which will be our opener, not because it's best, but because it is on theme for the Jewish Japan run. But also we will have the unique samurai interest group, which has the Bakufu ideology, which causes them to support the Shogunate generally speaking, and so this makes it harder to pass laws that it disempower the Shogunate, which is the general kind of goal of, the Honorable Restoration journal entry that we will be having here. Beyond that, we also have the very sneaky Industrialists, which has the Zaibatsu cooperation, which is just considerably worse than vanilla Industrialists, which get investment pool contribution efficiency. Overall, giving just off the back of this, Japan kind of has weak interest groups. They also don't normally have Jewish on their devout, but they have a not very good devout, which gives minus, I think the bonus that they give, it's changed in a recent patch. It gives minus turmoil or minus radicals from movements, which is just overall not going to be that strong. But perhaps the most important and defining feature of Japan is that we start on traditionalism. Now, a lot of GPs will look to open up our market. This is kind of an RNG thing. In theory, we want GPs to open up our market faster or as fast as possible, and it will also give us various kind of events that play into the honorable restoration to kind of simulate how Japan was opened up historically, but we will be playing in a way that we can get off this if we need to, without needing to get someone to enforce it on us. But if they enforce it on us, it will be much, much easier. It's going to require a lot of politics and a lot of law passes, but importantly what this does is it makes it so you can't trade, and so you have to construct your entire market and economy yourself. So you have to supply yourself with everything, and so the opener does have some interesting kind of flavor in the sense that you need to construct local economies and really build up from the ground up, because you start out not even being able to, say, turn on one of the very strongest PMs in the game in the sawmills because you have no tools. So we are opening with putting the devout in government and enacting state religion. This, of course, is going to make them loyal, which unlocks their bonuses. We've also decided how we want to spend our authority. We are going to spend nothing on any sort of taxes, and we are going to spend instead a bunch on encouraging agriculture industry, at least at the very opener here. Also very strong would be promoting social mobility. We are leaving this 717 floating, so we have minus enactment time. We have a lot of laws we want to pass. But as we pass some of these, we will look to promote social mobility for that education access. But why we are doing this at the outset is because the agriculture throughput, notably, very importantly, applies to the peasants. They apply to the subsistence farms. And since this is like maybe 70 to 80% of our total economy now is in subsistence farms, this represents an enormous juice up to our economy, going from 0% throughput on these buildings to 20% throughput. If we just watch these come around, you will see the price of all of this drops very, very significantly as the market is flooded with additional sell orders of these goods, and we will also see probably a little bit of a bump in the GDP, but it is very important that this is dropping the cost of all the goods, and so this is going to support us being able to run very high taxes. We're also improving relations with Russia and Great Britain, and we have started to put our interest here in China because we are going to be opening up with tricking Great Britain into giving us a whole lot of juicy stuff. For our construction sectors that we are opening up with, we are placing them all over the place. That is because we are planning on staying on wooden frame buildings and using the outputs from the subsistence farms in both the wood and the fabric to support our early construction. Normally, on a lot of countries, you would want to swap up to iron frame anyway and just import a whole bunch of iron. We can't import iron, and also very importantly is the PMs for iron mines are really, really, really bad when you are still on picks and shovels, and so we're going to produce just enough iron, at least at the outset, in order to support us moving on to wrought iron tools. Now, before we can go on to wrought iron tools, we're going to need to go on to crude tools, so kind of in the behind, all of these construction sectors, we are going to have a tooling workshop in Tohoku so that they can supply in Tohoku the necessary inputs for going on to sawmills, which is considerably stronger than simple forestry here. In our 2 practice runs, we did this war with 0 difficulty to be able to sway in Great Britain. Notably, we did the trick where we would look at Great Britain's government and swap in the petite bourgeoisie to resemble them, but doing it for like the realsies, good dealsies, we've re-rolled several times before we finally gotten this, and then we get with the war goals here for Cheikh Treaty Port for Eastern Guangdong. It is notable, just to kind of illustrate what the idea is for swaying or changing the government in terms terms of being able to help with sways, if we go here and we unpause for a second, you will see we can sway them with a whole lot more stuff because we have a similar government. We can sway with any of the treaty ports. We'll still give them Eastern Guangdong because it's their favorite, and we will continue on our way. We'll also slot back in our government after they accept, although we are a little bit afraid of if they decide to abandon us now because we swap our government to something they don't like as much, they might run the other way. They do not, and what we will do is towards the end of this, we will put in more war goals that we want. In particular, they're quite fearful, likely to back down, but we're looking to get kind of a big bag from this war. So the war pops off here. We decided to go for North Jilin here, as well as liberate Korea. This will make taking Korea down the line way easier because they will be both liberated, and we will have a land border with them on top of North Jilin being an insane state on multiple fronts. A bunch of gold will appear here, and it will also be our second state that has a bay or a port shipyards modifier that is going to be nice to be building out of. The other one is, of course, Shikoku, which is going to allow us to build shipyards as well. We pass state religion, and with all the gobs and gobs of approval that we are getting off of the Shogunate as a consequence of just having passed that, this plus 10, we are going to be able to transition onto tenant farmers relatively painlessly without having any sort of stall chance whatsoever. Easy peace deal, easy life. We will get exactly what we want. So we are improving relations with France. Notably, we want to have at least 2 countries that we get plus 50 relations with for the purposes of making recognition easier. So we have rivaled up Qing to go for France. Also very important in Beijing is us being able to gate the Forbidden City, which is going to give us legitimacy from including the head of state and government. Now, this building is going to fire down in the near future as stuff gets adjusted, because if we take a look at the Han Pops right now, we will see that disallows upper and middle strata work in government buildings in cultural ratio stratus, and that is their status currently. So what we are going to end up having to do is we are going to need to move on to going on to racial segregation. However, racial segregation, of course, allowing these pops to be less discriminated because we share a heritage trait. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's the heritage trait, not a cultural trait that we share. But we will see this Han national movement, and they are in fact agitating for racial segregation, which is perfect for us. We're going to bolster these guys at least temporarily. We are flying on the law pass because we got enactment time reduction, which is going to be good for us. And the first tech we are researching in stock exchange also comes through. We're going to go for atmospheric engine. We're not going to research all the 15K. We're just going to go up to the 10K in order to lock in the cost. And then as we research cotton gin and lathe, the cost will come down by 2.5K, and then we will research it instantly. And so we will be researching that for now. So we roll opposition members, put forth demands, and just want to kind of showcase a little bit what you can get in terms of stacking the reduction modifiers here. If we see the next tick is in 54 days for us, we're getting a minus 45%, one from a timed modifier that happened earlier, another 25% here from our floating authority. This is why we're floating authority, but we have an opportunity for an additional minus 15%. We'll lose a little bit of enactment chance, but not too big a deal when we have this much stall chance. Unfortunately, there's not a good way for us to get over, this degree of legitimacy, except for there is. We're just going to slot these guys out because we already have enactment chance from them anyways. And now when we take a look at the hover, we will see that this will be enacting in just 39 days. Oh, nope, 14. Because we have minus 85% enactment time, and so this will absolutely fly in terms of getting tenant farmers. Now, if we roll a bad enough event that will give us more than minus 15% or more than 25%, we will slot, the peasants back in. But until then, we're just going to pass this law easy peasy, lemon squeezy, super, super fast, except for when we get, law debate failed. Of course, it will be a little bit more complicated, but devout scandal, we'll ignore that. We are going to ignore any devout scandals here, but this law will come through pretty quick. So we do get our tooling workshop coming in. This is kind of an important detail because we're on isolationism. We do have to move everything up piecemeal, but with the tooling workshop in, we will swap up to wrought iron tools because we also finish our initial iron mine, and we will be able to swap up on sawmills a bunch of places. Now, taking Beijing also has the secondary benefit that they do have, tooling workshop as well. We swapped it down to crude tools because we really don't have enough iron to support it, but the combination of all of these should allow us to move on up. And so what we're going to do is we are going to take a look here, and we're going to go to rural, and we are going to swap all of these up onto logging camps. We are going to be really focused on building a ton of logging camps, and then secondarily coming through, we are also going to focus a little bit on building fishing yards. So we do want to put a shipyard in Shikoku. We've put this on auto expand, and in this way we will be able to support our building out fishing, because we really want to de-peasant as quickly as possible as a general heuristic in Japan. And the very key idea of these different industries is, if we look at the resource industries, the logging camps are 2 under construction, the fishing wharves are 2 under construction, and they will both employ 5,000 pops. And so this is way faster than building mines or building industry where it's 600 or 800 construction. And so we will be able to move more peasants out from being in the subsistence farms very quickly. And these peasants are hyper qualified. They have a really high literacy rate, and so qualifications are generally not going to be an issue for us, and so they will kind of fly into the jobs, and we don't have to worry about over expanding too fast where we aren't going to be able to support the qualifications. And so this is going to be our focus for a little bit. I forgot that in a recent patch they actually did give this inland sea bonus to a whole bunch of different places, so we are going to be moving the shipyard instead to be built in Kanto, which is going to be the future capital, a state that we are going to keep an eye on, because we're going to probably try and build up Tokyo really tall like it is in real life. Tenant farms has just been passed, which is critical for a couple of reasons. One, we move on to free peasants, wherein our pops will be receiving 4 subsistence output, which is kind of fake money that the crypto bro peasants use to buy fake goods, instead of being on 3, but also less grain will be produced, which means we will be able to drive the grain price up significantly easier to be able to proc corn laws. In fact, we might even be able to proc it now by coming in on the decrees and removing all of our agricultural industry decrees that we have set out. We did remove one so we could pass the law a little bit faster, and we can see if we could spike this just a little bit higher. We can't quite spike it over 25, but all we have to do is declare a war, find a war, and we should be able to pop the very strong corn laws journal entry. We have an idea of what war we want to pop, so we will be back when we pop it. So we were initially going to go for Bolivia once our infamy dropped low enough, but we see this play had formed, and there's going to be chunks taken out of Bolivia, people are going to be liberated, and it's really not that great a target anymore. However, with return to Antofagasta here, we can get a discount on Chile, in the sense that the Chilean war goal will not, for subjugating them, will not include the fact that they have Antofagasta yet, if we declare it before they get Antofagasta. This play is unlikely to go Peru-Bolivia's way, and even if it doesn't, us getting Chile as a subject is going to be just fine, because Chile is a minor power, or they tend to be a minor power, and this is good because it generally will allow us to generate mandate a little bit faster. We're going to go up on some infamy. We do not need to actually enforce this war, though. We don't really care fundamentally about enforcing this war. What we care about is recruiting up a bunch of conscripts and recruiting them so that we can force the grain price high enough that we can get it over 25 to proc the corn laws. So there is a native uprising, fortunately, in Chile, so we don't have to declare another kind of garbage war, and we are able to get a grain price up to plus 27% as soon as we revoke our decrees. And so now we have the corn laws, which will give us ticking events, eventually giving us a very strong agitator, which will allow us to open up, and get off of isolationism. We have too good of relations with, no one's declared war on us to open us up, unfortunately. To be fair, we could have tried damaging relations with Great Britain, something like this, in order to get them to attack us, to demand or look to get investment rights, but it looks like we will be doing this ourselves and moving on to free trade once we have that agitator. We are just a little bit shy of that 10k mark on the atmospheric engine. Notice that the price has come down from 1500 to 12,500, and so what we're going to do is we're going to swap over to lathe and then switch onto atmospheric engine, and lathe is going to be really good for us. In particular, the dye workshops on the clothing industries will produce a lot more basic clothing, and this is one of the things that's kind of holding us down in terms of standard of living, in terms of being able to run max taxes. Currently we're at not just high taxes. We're staying above the minimum expected standard of living because we have that higher wage rate, but we are hoping to improve that a little bit. Also, we are stalling out going for racial segregation. This is a little bit annoying, but not too big a deal. We're prepping for another war with Great Qing. We're going to try and see if we can get help with this one, either from Russia or Great Britain, and so we'll be shopping around in terms of what strategic region we want to declare it in. That might make sense, whether that's Manchuria, North China, South China, if we can somehow get Great Britain to help us. To that end, we've improved relations with Russia, although we don't want relations to get too high, because we're going to need to declare a war on them in not too long. So a few things. First, Great Britain has expelled our diplomats. Obviously, we can't improve relations now, and they are domineering. We are hoping they open us up like a coconut, but also we do research a lathe, unlocking the dye workshops, and immediately afterwards, atmospheric engine. This is going to be particularly good for us, and we are going to begin piecemeal swapping up the PMs onto iron frame buildings. These will be kind of an expensive swap. We'll see if we have 5 in both Kanto and Tohoku. We have prepped by building a few iron mines, a few extra iron mines, and we will see a very expensive price up here, but we should be able to support this price by swapping everything onto atmospheric engine. We've, ahead of time, built a couple of coal mines to support this, and so this should be pretty lucrative for us as things come along and allow us to switch to a much better construction PM, and we're not running a shortage, but in the queue, we will be swapping from doing pretty much exclusively logging camps and fishing wharves to starting to spam a lot more iron mines as well, and we're expecting to see that these government-owned buildings do get picked up by local industries. We will swap both of the iron mine places, both of the places with iron mines, up to iron frame buildings first, and then probably look to actually add construction sectors there instead of upgrading the other ones. Beijing also notably does have an iron supply, so we will get that going as well there. We get the event from the Corn Laws, the ticking event of a modern conservative, which was exactly what we wanted, which will give us a special agitator. This agitator is a market liberal, so he will support laissez-faire and also free trade. And so we want to put him in government. In order to do that, we are going to have to bolster the liberal movement until it is pressuring the shogunate. And once it's pressuring the shogunate, we'll be able to put that market liberal in charge of the shogunate and then use him to pass a whole bunch of laws that we like. For now, we're getting to the point where we kind of are okay not really passing laws as quickly as possible because we don't have really too many after racial segregation that are high priority. And so we're going to come in and we're going to start promoting social mobility in states that particularly have really high populations. Now, we're not going to be promoting in Beijing, even though Beijing has the biggest population, because it's not incorporated, and we're not going to be incorporating it anytime soon. So we passed racial segregation here, which very importantly is going to move the Han Pops from cultural erasure up to being in open prejudice. It's going to move them up to 50 acceptance, which very critically in open acceptance, they will now be able to work in the government buildings. So if we take a look here, right now they will be at 50, and so they will be promoting up from this level 2 to a new level 3 and be able to be employed up in government buildings. So the liberal movement is now pressuring the shogunate. So what we will be able to do is we will be able to take this market liberal guy who supports stuff like interventionism and laissez-faire, and we will be able to grant him leadership of the shogunate. And so now we can pass a whole bunch of laws that we like getting off of traditionalism first. I think you can make an argument, and it perhaps makes some sense, to go free trade first, or even protectionism first, because there's no stall chance on that. But I think we're just looking to kickstart the economy, and there's still a chance that we get opened up like a coconut by Great Britain, who is not a fan of us, although I don't think they're damaging relations with us, so they can deck on us anytime they want, though. We are keeping an eye on Russia. We're probably going to declare on Russia relatively soon. We are going for the line infantry tech. I'm not entirely sure if it is necessary in order to defend the coast against Russia, but just to be safe, we are going to go for that, and then we are going to go for recognition off of Russia. You may have noticed the construction come back down. We are now at kind of an equilibrium point where our investment pool is added together with our balance roughly even. We're slightly gaining here. We don't want to go too deep into debt because we'll start to have to pay a lot in interest, so we're raking back the construction to avoid that. What we're doing, though, is we are deleting a lot of these wood frame buildings, and we are leaving up the places, the buildings in the areas where we have iron production. So we're leaving up the ones in Beijing, Kanto, and Tohoku. We will delete in the other spots, knowing that eventually when we turn on the iron frame buildings, we will be working with that. Because the buildings are being purchased by private interests, though, in the investment pool is able to drain out and to resupply us here. What we're looking is to get out of any sort of debt, because interest is way too expensive when you're unrecognized. So as long as we're unrecognized, which isn't for that much longer, we don't want to be paying that. So we're going to temporarily be a little bit lower, but then looking to later on turn up the heat. For atmospheric engine and pump event, we will go for the water tube boiler. I think that might be the next tech that we go for after this, and then followed by going for mech tools into railways. We will want to make sure, though, that we actually get some production of arms industries, knowing that we are going to be moving up to line infantry. We're going to put it on auto expand here in the capital. Made a little bit of an interesting discovery that is kind of critically important to what we're doing with this run in regards to stacking positive wage multipliers for our various pops, which is that this weakens the money saving effect that you get off of government wages considerably because of the way these multipliers stack. This gives minus government wages, and this stacks additively, or based on the math that we did, which we won't go into in too great of detail, it stacks additively with the other increases and decreases in wages, which means that you are going to end up paying more, or you're going to get a smaller cost reduction on running lower government wages when you are stacking positive modifiers to wages. And so what I mean to say by this is that instead of these guys, this Jewish Japan clerks, because they're both Japanese and Jewish, instead of these guys getting paid 125% of the normal wage and then having this reduced by 30%, it stacks additively with that 30%, and they're getting paid 95% of the normal wage. These guys, because they are not Jewish and they are Shinto, instead of getting paid 115% of the normal wage, they are instead getting paid, and then having that reduced by 30%, they're getting paid 85% of the normal wage. And so in terms of the math, what this means is these guys are effectively getting a bigger reduction in cost than these guys are when it comes to utilizing this modifier, which is generally used to rake back as much money as possible to increase construction. In a simplified version of illustrating this math, if we had plus 100% wages on one pop, let's say this Jewish Japanese pop, and 0 increased wages on these pops, by reducing additively by 30%, this modifier, by reducing this additively by 30%, we would bring this pop down to paying 170%, which represents a 15% decrease. But on the pop that has no positive modifiers, instead of plus 100%, we would reduce it from 100% to 70%, which represents a 30% decrease. And so the money savings from this is decreased as you stack positive wage multipliers. This also, by the way, implies that it could be the case that running a high discrimination society it would be the case that running a high discrimination society would allow you to save even more on government wages, because if you are running, let's take a look into the tech. If you are running something that has high discrimination and let's say ethno-state, and will have a decreased wages, minus 40% wages for cultural erasure, this again stacks additively, so you'd have minus 70% wages. Now the problem is you can't deploy up in government buildings as easily if you are on these lower statuses, but this would effectively make it, rather than decreasing by 30%, if you have this minus 40% already and it stacks additively, then you would be having minus 70 in total. And so what it would represent from the baseline is it would represent a 50% decrease in the amount of wages you're paying. So we have line infantry now, and we have this war, and when we enforce this war, we will give full recognition because we will be enforcing 4 war goals with sufficient maneuvers to make it so that Russia gives us recognition, because we've already satisfied the condition of being or having plus 50 relations with France. Now, we received this, and we talked about how we wanted this, Great Britain to open us up like a coconut, but the timing here is actually a little bit off. The vibes are off because we want to get on interventionism first, and if we do this event, we will get another further event from Japanese flavor, which will cause the shogunate to become very weak, and will encourage us to slot the shogunate out of government. We don't want that right now because we are trying to pass stuff with our market liberals, so the timing is off. So what we will do is we are going to go for declare interest. We're going to move our interest over here because we want to go for, as our primary war goal, British Guiana, and we won't have enough time if we respond to this immediately. So we'll just pretend, we'll leave that note on our desk and pretend like nothing happened, and eventually we'll auto-reject, and hopefully this gives us enough time to get our interest into this region here so that we can put as our primary war goal, not war reps, because if we put as our primary war goal war reps, we will not be able to enforce it. Unfortunately, we just barely get enough time. See, this is our interest activated, and so we should be able to come in here and put British Guiana as our primary war goal. If our primary war goal is war reps, we won't ever be able to enforce on them, although to be fair, what I think we're going to do, ideally what we could do, is we could pass interventionism and then just trade foreign investment rights for also us getting British Guiana here. And in this way, we can get something out of this too. We want to give them investment rights because we want to lean into this for this run, although we are having more additional second thoughts in addition to it being bad, a kind of further model of how it's bad, because the way in which wages are good for you in terms of, them juicing up your economy and this counting as value added when we took a look at the weekly balance of the wages. The way in which wages are kind of more directly good for you is they push up prices because they push up demand, and this is generally a good thing. But in some sense, if you're only extracting from the upper class, them pushing up demand so you can extract from the upper class, you still need to be owning the upper class. And so when our GDP ownership starts to slip and the Great Britain starts to acquire more and more of it, the thing that we are juicing up is going to get proportionally less and less ours. We'll talk about this more later, but this is a subject for concern. What is not a subject for concern is winning these wars, because I'm pretty confident that with 72 line infantry, we should be able to defend relatively straightforwardly against both Russia and Great Britain, although there are some landing stuff, or I guess either Russia or Great Britain, although there's maybe some landing intricacies that are going to get a little bit annoying if either of them tie up too large a proportion of our army, such that we don't actually roll a decent sized battle with the other one. They might be able to get in. We're expecting to see 2 to 3 landings in on us, but what we're going to do with Russia, as kind of is the normal for whenever you fight Russia, is we're going to be landing in this region up here, and all we need to do to enforce the 4 war goals we went for, which are liberate Kamchatka, Chukotka, war reparations, and revoke claim on Sakhalin. All we need in order to be able to do this is to occupy these 3 states here. And so, or these 3 states here, which is fairly straightforward for us. So coming in, we have 2 landings, 18 stack coming in from Great Britain, and a 51 stack coming in from Russia, and we have a 96 stack on line infantry, 100% infantry with 25 defense. So this should be fairly straightforward. We're not going to land Guyana until we get interventionism in. We're currently at 60% success chance though, so this shouldn't take too long. And this is what we're talking about here. Russia often doesn't defend this categorically. Here they're actually defending with the 2 stack, but that 2 stack's not going to be enough to keep us out, especially without a general. That's not going to cut it, and so we're going to land here, and then we're just going to push these 3 states and wait and enforce out on Russia. Russia's also landing over here. I think that, well, we actually might be able to slough them off a 12 stack with our 5 stack. Not 100% sure, but what we could do is we could move over this 10 stack just so we don't get occupied, just so we don't get devastation. I think we'll be doing that, but we should be fairly straightforward to defend because the landing penalty is quite substantive, and so we don't need more migration attraction because they're not even allowed to migrate yet anyways. But see, coming in here, we should be in decent shape. This is a little bit rough though. That's a little bit more offense than we were expecting in here on the battle. We've occupied up here in the north, and we are just set to defend now because this is all we need to occupy. If we push too deep into Russia, they'll actually assign guys to the front, but no one's heading out over to this front. These guys are just staying put, so we will be enforcing on Russia. However, looks like Russia did a little bit of a landing. We moved our 10 stack back to try and defend. It's not going to be enough, so we are going to do a little bit of cheeky cheese in that they will get stuck here if we have an ongoing naval battle when they win their final landing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to send out our navy to catch them up here. We get our naval battle, and now their army will get stuck, dealing with this naval battle when the landing happens. Except for, we timed it wrong. Alright, we'll see if we can front spaghetti them and deal with them in this way. So we're going to split this guy into 2 units. And then we are going to be getting ready to assign these guys to both sides. If you time it a little bit better than we did, if we have an ongoing naval battle, it's a little bit hard with the 6 stack, but if you have an ongoing naval battle, they will get stuck in there. So what we're going to do is we are going to assign various 5 stacks here to each of these fronts and look to catch them. We can't assign a really fat stack to defend against the Russia or to defend in this area because of Russia, but what we will do is we will take our big stack, we will cut it in half, and we will put them on this front here, and so we will have guys on each of these fronts, and so hopefully we are able to hold them long enough that we can push them out with this 5 stack here. And so we have also already sent over someone to take Guyana because things are looking a little perilous, and we are about to pass interventionism anyways, and so we would like to just get this over and done with. We have our battles ensuing here, and this should be good for us as long as the Great Britain cannot apply troops in time, which they will be unlikely to do, but their subjects will be likely to be able to do. It's a little bit of a race against time here, but we do spaghetti them off the front. Fantastic for us. We will look to keep everyone here, keep everything tight, and just be nice and safe. And so we will continue to be able to prolong this, and we will get our roll on interventionism. 60%, good chance, and we get on it. So now we're pretty okay with giving them foreign investment rights. We're less okay with these other 2 war goals. So we are going to look to see if we can enforce them down a little bit by the landing of over here in Guyana. So we can enforce on Russia. Unfortunately, this will not give us recognition. It will completely max out the bar, but during the course of this war, France has decided to expel our diplomats, which is very uncomfortable, and so we don't have plus 50 relations with them. We're still going to enforce here. Unfortunately, we get this through, and it does look like we will be able to trade with Great Britain, or we would be able to because they're in the negative. However, they're sending us a peace deal. This is actually kind of uncomfortable. We do have to try and make this work, because if they occupy our capital here, they will no longer be willing to accept any peace deal, and this does look a little bit suspect. I don't know if this works out for us. We are getting battles in. We are defending against a naval landing. The naval landing has 75% progress. It is a little bit close, and they do occupy us, which is, of course, no good for us. I don't think there's actually... We're going to have a little bit of a think here. Alright, so we were going to try and see if we could spaghetti their front, but seeing as this just happened, where their guys got to the front in time, there's pretty much no chance for us to recover from this position to a reasonable state where we could trade just 1 war goal, and they're going to end up enforcing on us, especially because they are actually dealing with our 1 stack, slowly but surely. They sent 100 troops back to deal with this single guy, but it doesn't really matter because they will be able to enforce on us. So what we're going to do is we are just going to accept their white peace deal, and I guess hope that France decides to open us up like a coconut, which is a little bit unfortunate. We're going to also go for, I think, Bolivia here in terms of subjugation. I do believe that they still have some subjects here. They have gotten independence here, but this will allow us to generate a lot more mandate for our power block, which we cannot form because we're not recognized, because we didn't let them open us up like a coconut. Hopefully France declares on us for this, because now we're left in a little bit of a weird spot. We can go free trade ourselves, and maybe we'll just end up doing this and kind of show the slower way to, do the restoration. The fastest way to do the restoration, we've done that so many times, I didn't want to do it again for this run, is forcing a revolution and beating the landowners in a revolution. But I guess we'll do free trade ourselves and not get opened up, because unfortunately this is going to make it so that we don't get an event that is pretty good for doing the restoration, but we're just going to go for this and start to do it, and we are going to demobilize these armies, because we have to keep in mind we are still technically fighting Argentina, because we haven't gone in after them. I think we actually have a big enough navy, though, that we can do this, so why don't we finish up this war for being able to do that. Looks like these guys haven't recovered yet in terms of their commander, so we'll just recruit another one, and then we will move the first commander off of there eventually. But we'll see if we can get in. I think we have another naval base in here somewhere. No, we don't. It's that we built 8 and then we split the one off, so we'll just add another frigate here, so we will not suffer the landing penalty, and we should be able to get in against a 4-stack. So we just discover condensing engine pump here, and this combined with us getting onto interventionism, which is helping quite a bit with the budget. You can see that our investment pool is growing quite quickly, so even though our budget looks negative, it's not really negative, because the investment pool is buying up buildings really quick that are currently owned by the government. This will allow us to swap everything else up onto iron frame buildings without suffering too much negative effects, and in fact we will be cranking up. In the queue we have a whole bunch of extra military because we are building a bunch of cavalry, because we could not land on Argentina because they mobilized some more army, and so we are going to look to build up to having a 20 stack, or not quite a 20 stack, like a 16 stack of infantry and cavalry that we will use to land here in Argentina. So we get the fertilizers tech, but we're not, since we're isolationists, we're not going to be able to turn on all of these all at once. We'll be able to turn on just a few, but what we will get cooking is in Shikogu, which is our one place that has sulfur. We will build a sulfur mine, we'll put it on auto expand. We will also build a fertilizer plant, we'll put that on auto expand, and then we will, in order to be able to support the just 2 rice farms that we have, we will swap up on this to be able to, wait, which is the one that, yeah, this will give us some fertilizer as well, and so we will be able to support the little bit until we get going, and we'll be able to turn on the rest of the fertilizer. Incidentally, sulfur being an input for paper, eventually, not quite yet, will make this a nice place to also be auto-expanding on paper, which we're going to need as we're building out increasing bureaucracy. We are also at an inflection point where we're starting to make edict swaps a little bit. We're pulling off of a lot of the encouraged agricultural industry, still keeping it on our very most populated places, including Beijing, but what we are doing is, in all of our incorporated states, we are looking to push up the education access and promote social mobility, and so we are making that swap. We only have these remaining states on encourage agricultural industry, and also in the capital here, or the future capital that will be Tokyo one day, we have encouraged manufacturing here, and so this should make our literacy just absolutely explode, kind of approaching that 90 figure that we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Empiricism with the wealth-based education access will also allow us to push up SOL a little bit. Even with the lower rung strata, their wealth is their SOL right now, so being able to push up an average of 4 more, that would get us over 81, not even including the big hitch that we made. Also, for the journal entry, for that tech, we are going to be pushing up the universities to level 5, just to pip the journal entry. We can't really afford too much university right now, although we generally would like to push universities a little bit more than a European start, because we will be able to benefit a bit more from tech spread because we are so far behind in Japan. Notably, this kind of modifier here, this cap, this is actually a soft cap, for those of you who don't know, where any amount over the cap that you get, some of that will flow into your natural spread, and you will be able to pick up techs that you are behind on a bit faster. In terms of tech, we are pushing railways because we are starting to run out of infrastructure, and so this is going to be a little bit of a thing. We are building government administrations in the queue, for example, but we are avoiding building in the capital because we just have 8 more infrastructure. It's not the biggest deal, though, if we start to bump into too much infrastructure problems because we're on an island. We still have plenty of ports to be able to push, so we could build an additional 35 infrastructure here into the capital, but we don't really want to push ports that give us convoys that we can use for more trade before we have any trading. So this is, once we get past that, I suppose it's going to be less important for us to get onto railways, but we still want to go for it. Alright, so we get free trade here, so we are going to be putting in a whole bunch of new trades in order to make our economy a lot better, and we will be able to do stuff like swap up PMs that we have previously not been swapping up that require us to have certain inputs, like getting all of the grain onto soil-enriched farming. We will just import the fertilizer we need, and we'll come back with kind of a little bit of an overview of our trade deal. So for our opening salvo of trade, we have imports on some basic consumer goods. These are generally a bit expensive for us. We're importing both clothing and furniture, looking to push up SOL a little bit before we are able to make a transition to a consumer good, more oriented economy. We're still building mines, fishes, and lumber. We want to be doing this because it depeasants really quickly. To that end, we want to encourage the price of wood to be higher, so we're exporting it in a couple spots. We're also importing a bunch of agrarian inputs. We don't want our pops to go into agrarian professions as much, and the routes that you can run from China on the agrarian goods are just extremely profitable, generally speaking. We are also importing fertilizer because we have a shortage, and we want to turn up the PM that allows us to produce a whole lot more grain. So this is kind of our opening salvo here. Some of these are not profitable. We're expecting them to become profitable, like the luxury clothes we generally want to be exporting, and we're expecting that at some point dyes will become a little bit more profitable as we have started to push slightly into the consumer goods manufacturing. We have an auto expand here. This is going to play pretty nicely in Kanto, in the capital, or the future capital, where we are getting 20% additional throughput from the edict that we have down here, and so we will want to build these up slowly, and this will help to solve the really expensive clothing issue, as well as increase buy orders for dyes, which will come in, and sell orders for luxury clothes. So this is going to make our routes that we have with China eventually a little bit more profitable than they are right now. Alright, so our attempts to build up a squad suitable for landing have so far been not particularly successful, and it's not looking like they're going to be successful here at in the near future. So what we're going to do is, we do have Chile as a subject. We're just going to enforce military access on them, and then we are going to cancel the naval invasion, and since these guys are already right here, we will have these guys assigned to that front, and then further, we will take a 5-stack. It doesn't really matter too much which one, but we will have this 5-stack try and land in the capital of Argentina once this naval battle is over, and the idea being that if they assign their entire army to deal with our army, then they won't be able to defend properly against the 5-stack. So we're hoping that this works, and we're hoping that Chile doesn't get pushed out too quickly. It's a little bit risky, I suppose, to do this while Chile is having a bit of an issue, but it looks like they're going to assign to the front as well and assist us, and then we are going to probably want to build a few more convoys now that we are trading a little bit, and also to make it so our subjects aren't so pissed to settle all the time. We're going to be adding a few more of these into the queue. We have a bit in the queue. We could kick these naval bases to the back of the queue, though. We're going to want them eventually, but not in the immediate future. We have a little bit of an opportunity here in that Heavenly Kingdom is rising up against Great Qing. It's one of the reasons why we've maintained an interest here for a little bit of time with hopes that this would happen, and while it's a fairly small and modest Heavenly Kingdom uprising, I do think it's enough that we will be able to fight Great Qing again, and so this is what we're going to be doing. Initially, we were going to declare for Shaanxi, but then we noticed Kalisha Raj would side against us. Now, Great Qing is using irregular infantry, but the Raj, these boys, they start with line infantry, and we don't really want to tangle with that too much, and so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be declaring the war in a different HQ instead, and we're going to be liberating Manchuria. This will make it mean that we will have to pay slightly more infamy for this state up here, but that state basically costs no infamy anyways, and so we will go for Liberate Manchuria as our primary war goal, and then we are going to scrape the absolute bottom of the barrel recruiting up every single conscript that we can, out of every single state. I suppose we will not be using enlistment efforts if we do not have to, because we won't be able to rake back authority that we refund in this particular spot, but we will be looking to liberate them. We also, in the queue, have put in a bunch of ports, because we are going to run really negative on supply routes, which is going to negatively affect morale. This is going to be really rough for us. I think the only reason why this is kind of sort of possible is that we just need to win the states that we need, and then we will not, we can just defend because they have negative offense and irregulars. They will not be able to push into us that easily, even if we have very, very low morale. We've also made a slight adjustment in that we're going to go for Napoleonic warfare into skirmish in case that this goes really, really long. I'm guessing we're just going to be finishing Napoleonic faster, but considering we're building ports, the railways are a little bit less important in the immediate future, and while we do not have very many horsemen, the upgrade to Lancers will be pretty nice as far as we can get it, and so these are a couple of adjustments we've been making so that we can hopefully try and win this war. Now, for secondary war goals, we are likely to put in, I think we're going to put in Shaanxi and then liberate some of these guys in addition to war reps, something like this, so that we can look to enforce all of our war goals first and then switch to the Heavenly Kingdom's war goals. And so we will try not to occupy the capital here in Beijing, or not in Beijing, in southern Anhui. By not occupying this capital, we can enforce our war first, because if we enforce the Heavenly Kingdom's war, which we will be joining on their side, if we enforce this war, then they will annex all of China, and I'm pretty sure that will break our war goals for the war that we just started here. So we don't want to be doing that. So we have the Heavenly Kingdom War open up. These are the fronts at the start. We have conscripts coming up here. This is a fairly soft front. This is a soft front. They haven't really assigned much. This is a front we're losing on slightly, but it's looking a little bit better than I thought. We're going to open with landing here, and this is going to cause the fronts to get scrambled, because this front will turn into a left-right front instead of two separate fronts as the fronts unite here in Hebei. And in the scramble, we might be able to get something done. We are also going to land up here in Manchuria with the one stack. They do not have anyone defending this HQ. They don't have anyone defending this HQ, and so this should get in fairly easy on both fronts. As they conscript up more, they might be a little bit better at defending their HQs, but as it stands, they will be in rough shape up here. Looks like we do get our landing in up here. I think we'll take a swap over and see if we can land near the capital in Suzhou, looking or taking care not to unite any sort of fronts, and see if we can get something spicy going on. Is our fleet... Oh no, our fleet's so far away. Our fleet is off in... was in South America. That is a bit unfortunate. That's going to slow things down a little bit of poor preparation on our part, but when this fleet comes in, we should be in really good shape. Except for, are they defending... Yeah, they're defending South China, but they're not defending the North China HQ, so this South China landing will not get in, but the other one in the north looks like it will be getting in here, and this is going to cause the spaghetti, which is our personal favorite. We're going to make sure that everyone's assigned to the fronts that we want them on, because very often people will get assigned to the wrong front, and then we will be able to continue from here in this war. We have a disadvantage up here. It looks like they assigned a decent chunk of troops up there, which is kind of a strange behavior. We're going to stop landing here because they're actually defending against it, and instead switch to the North China HQ in Shenyang. We might as well use this stack here because we're not landing with this 14er, and this 14er that has gotten in, we are going to put him on rapid advance in all the spots. We do want to be maybe a little bit weary about enforcing too quickly in some spots, but I think that this war is sufficiently hard that we need to push things a little bit. We do want to enforce our war first. That is the war for the Liberation and Shaanxi, but we do want to also make some progress and make some things difficult for them and wear them down, because take a look at this convoys. While we are looking really good right now, we are going to have significant morale issues because lacking supply is going to gate our the degree at which we recover morale, or I think it's inhibits the cap to which we can recover morale, and we will lose battles with only a small advantage in offense and defense. Looks like we're about to occupy the war goal that we have up here, and we do not want to occupy this, but we already have, which will cause them to tick down in both the wars. We will just have to find a way to unoccupy that. We'll take the extra enactment time because we could use some bureaucracy right now, and the appointed bureaucrats should be coming in. We tried to go for the landed voting, but we're unable to do so. So now we're going to switch to this till we can up the landowners. But things are looking really, really rough on weakening the landowners overall. It looks like we really, really need them in government. So this is why we need to get off of our current voting system, because both monarchy and autocracy are giving us legitimacy from having the head of state in government, and so it's very hard to be legitimate without it, but we need to get the head of state out of government in order to do the honorable restoration. Probably should have just done the rev method, where we have forced the shogunate to rev and then win the rev, and you do this in order to get the restoration through, rather than trying to do it the slow and systematic way, especially because we didn't get the event when we got opened up, because we've passed free trade ourselves, which significantly inhibits our ability to kind of get this stuff through. We are making way more progress than I thought we were going to. I thought that this war was going to be significantly harder. I was mistaken. But what we did is we pulled this 81 stack completely off the front. Now we're going to reassign them to the front down here. But we pulled them off the front so that we would lose the capital here and stop enforcing in the other war, or in the other battle. So we'll just reassign here and look to reestablish a little bit of connection and slow them down in enforcing on the Heavenly Kingdom. But we will be taking them down in the war that we currently have just as quick as possible. They are pretty well occupied here with a lot of their territory. Incidentally, it's funny that they traded spaces with us over here, and I think we can clear this out just by landing. And this will be the most straightforward way to do this rather than trying to push that. But we're pushing all the way over here. We're going to occupy basically everything, enforce our war first, and then enforce Heavenly Kingdom, and so they will be left with the Heavenly Kingdom, and the Heavenly Kingdom will have a trade agreement with us. Not that we'll necessarily want to keep it for an extended period of time, but this is going to be fantastic for us in terms of the overall outcome. I was way more scared of this war than I needed to be, I suppose, but this is going to, well, looks like they're enforcing on HK. We could reassign. We probably need to reassign a little bit some of these to try and defend them a little bit more. I believe this is their capital, so we will look to land their capital and free it up rather than pushing out in the middle of nowhere. And so we'll just look to try and keep everything under control while we enforce our war goal first. Unfortunately, it looks like our naval landing is too slow to save the Heavenly Kingdom. They are going to get annexed, but we are still going to get to enforce what it is that we wanted to enforce on China, which is going to be pretty good for us. Do we really have to sit with that? Oh, no, wait. We have this. We will go for a white piece here because we obviously don't want to return Beijing, and we will have this as the outcome here, which sets us up pretty well for conquering all of this up here in the north and having a nice kind of Japanese standard imperial border. We also will have the option to conquer Jili later. Not the best war, not the worst. Actually, the war is fantastic. This was really good for us, but it could have gone a little bit better if this was Heavenly Kingdom instead of Great Qing. It's time for round 2. We are going to go for recognition on Russia again. We have 49 relations with both Prussia and Austria. This will be 50 by the time this play ends, and we will be going for Liberate Far East and Russian war reparations. I don't think we're going to go for too much more than that because we don't want to get greedy. Maybe we release another country in Siberia, but other than that, we're going to look to kind of keep our domain and our war goals that we have in on Russia contained here so that we can enforce on them more easily. And here we have it. Sweet, sweet recognition. I said sweet, sweet recognition. Oh, we have to propose the peace deal. Of course. But recognition will be had. A new dawn. We become recognized. And so now we can make our own interest group, or rather our own power block. But before we do that, I think that we are going to this guy. We want to grant this guy leadership. Unfortunately, we cannot grant him leadership because the samurai are not part of the government. But we are currently trying to pass landed voting. The samurai are really upset about it. They would be less upset about it if this guy wasn't an authoritarian, if he were instead a traditionalist. And also, we kind of wouldn't mind getting the traditionalist out from being an agitator. We don't necessarily want him agitating, so what we're going going to do is we're going to slot these guys into government, and we are going to grant leadership there. We will reform the government, of course, by taking out the samurai and continue on our merry way here. Now, with ourselves now recognized, we are finally able to make a power block, and it's going to make people a little bit less upset than if we were to have made a power block earlier when we were not recognized. We would have gotten minus 60 relations with everyone. Now we will only get minus 30. We needed to be off of isolationism in order to do it, but now we can. So we are going to decide to go religious convocation, which is going to give extra devout political strength, extra conversion, and clergy investment pool contribution efficiency. And we're going to go for divine economics here, and we will form this power block. It will upset everyone with a block, but that's okay. We will get events like this, like political lobbies, but now we are a ticking, and also, since we are recognized, and we will have kind of decent cohesion, and many of these minor power block members, we will generate mandate at an okay pace to move things along for our Council of Nations, which we will assuredly rename. So we finally got on wealth voting, and we have a pretty good looking election where we have 58% of the projected vote going the way of not the Shogunate, so maybe we can get the Shogunate slotted out, per trying to finally get the honorable restoration to proc here. Really so much easier if you do it with the Rev, so much easier if you don't pass it with free trade yourself. We are quite a bit behind. But also we've started to add a bit of construction in here. We are starting to make a lot more money. Before the revolution, or before, recognition, we were running minus 80k in interest payments, and then we got recognized and we got to around minus 40k, and now with getting up to being a great power, which will have a much lower loan interest rate, we're down to minus 25k, so things are much better in our regard, or in that regard, and also interest gets paid out to the owners of your buildings. Since the owners of our buildings, we have a lot of landowners, I'm expecting this decrease in payment to cause their standard of living to go down. And would not be shocked if they're kind of have an overall decreasing trend here in terms of clout, although this one is from the landed voting. And so hopefully all these things together will allow us to do something like this post-election and get above this 50 legitimacy mark. Regarding kind of foreign stuff, we're doing a little bit of some small ball wars in order to gain, dedicated interest kind of around the world so that we can apply more pressure and side in more stuff and start to emerge on the world stage a little bit as a great power. Let's put this one in Bengal here. And so this will be good for us. Actually, Bengal's no good. Congo, maybe? We don't have the colonization law to be able to utilize this, but in this way we're going to have more opportunities for sways, although quite a lot of GPs don't like us right now. They have negative attitudes towards us, and so it's not like we'll be able to get that much from them, but what we can do is we can reset the attitudes if we just join on their side in exchange for nothing. So we're going to go for Gaza so that we can get to these tasty gold states that we have left up on the table up until now. Gold has appeared in them. It's going to be really valuable, and so we do want to find an ingress there. Also, we will look to get some colonization going at some point, and so this will be pretty useful for us going in. We do get a nice enough election that we can slot this in as our government and then just reduce taxes another notch here, which our pops will like. We're still okay in the money situation. We're really okay. We maybe even want to spend a little bit more. And we will pop the restoration event because, or the honorable restoration, because the Shogunate is out of government, and this is fantastic for us. We will be moving things quite along. This will hurt us to the extent that we want to pass laissez-faire, but we'll see if we can pass this just off the back of our event ticks, giving us an additional 20% success chance, and then if we can't, it's not the end of the world to be stuck on interventionism for a little while. We get a good opportunity here to side in against America, which will reset our relations with, very importantly, Great Britain. We want to eventually give them investment rights, not because it's good, but because we want to mess about with it, and so we will ask for a trade agreement with the Netherlands. They will say yes, and this will cause the relations, since we're on the same side of a play, to go from antagonistic to genial, which is good for us. Unfortunately, they still have cold feelings towards us, so that's not going to be ideal. But this is also going to get us in good relations with Prussia. And hey, if we increase our volume of trade with them a little bit, they would be amenable to getting a trade agreement with us. We also get a nice sway opportunity here with Oman, going for the war goal of transfer against our new rival, the Ottoman Empire, Tripolitania, which will give us a native interest in North Africa, which it looks like France is going to continue to be naughty in. And incidentally, with this, we will also reset our relations with France, who was previously domineering. Let's see if they're still domineering. Nope, they're genial now. And so we can try and get a trade agreement with France by boosting up our total volume of trade with them, although it might be a little bit harder to get them than it was to get Prussia. So we just increased our education system to level 2, but even with it just at level 1, we're at 94% literacy, stacking, of course, Terioka, which eventually we do want to get rid of, but this is giving 45% education access to peasants, with, of course, what we have had the entire game with the powerful devout, who have been also happy, not the mortality, but the 20% education access from Yejavat coming in strong here. We might even get to 100% by the end of the episode, although I kind of doubt it, because the pops that are needing to get on up are going to be parts in incorporated states where we are currently not running this decree. Although we could go for it. We could go for it just to go for it. It's not good, but we would need to put in education decree in Shikoku and Kyushu as well. Or it looks like there's already one in Kyushu, so Shikoku and maybe Hokkaido would be required, although there's virtually no pops in Hokkaido, so, but Shikoku does have 1.67 million. So we need to be at war, or sorry, we need to be at peace, rather, for the honorable restoration to tick, and so we still want to make use of our infamy, so we decided to go for a really expensive infamy play, swaying in on the side of Oman, because this should be fairly straightforward with France in here, in order to subjugate Persia, which is going to play pretty nicely for us in the long run, especially as we kind of come into powering up our block eventually, with like the religious convocation. We will be able to, if we decide to keep these guys on heathen, give 50% income transfer. And we might experiment with this a little bit and see just how much we can juice this up in terms of income transfer by having them. And also, they will allow us to generate mandate a little bit faster, not quite as good as the minor powers that we have over here, the block of these four, but nonetheless, it'll still be useful for us. And the main idea is that we will be out of a war for an extended period of time. We will not have a war, which is exactly what we want in order to be able to get this restoration down. We'll reland Oman's kind of little port here, because this way we'll be able to get in, because I believe they need to specifically assign to that HQ or to the province there, which the AI is not going to do. They're just going to sit in Persia writ large. And also, we're expecting to see France do some landing here as well, and they are also doing a landing themselves. With a little bit of increased legitimacy, allowing us to stay above 50, and the passing of proportional taxation, we can increase tax up to the max level here. And a big part of this is proportional taxation takes less from the lower strata, and our lower strata, we're not really that concerned that they're going to be below minimum expected standard of living. Something that is helping us out in this regard is, of course, the fact that we have higher wages on our pops, allowing us to do this a little bit more. So now we're making money again. We're making around 15k, and we can afford to add a little bit of construction. We're not going to add too much, because we do want to rake back our debt a little bit, and we are also able to build railways. We have a couple railways coming up in Beijing because their ports can't employ up. We'll put another one in Shaanxi, but we also could use some ports in the capital in order to give ourselves more infrastructure here as well, because we are making use of our convoys. This war is looking a little bit spooky. I think that we still win it. I don't think that France capitulates out immediately, but it is looking like it is going to turn into a 1v1, and so what we are going to do is we are going to send a little bit more troops, but not too much, because we do have to keep an eye on the convoys. In fact, we might even put those ports at the top of the queue. Hey, we get the reading campaign achievement. Big nice. We haven't gotten that one before. Of course, it's a little cheeky, because it's off of it's off of the fact that we have a devout that's not a normal in-game devout. However, you can play as Israel, and you can release them and go education access. I don't know if releasing them, though, bricks the ability to get the achievement, but we do get the reading achievement. The big nice, the 95% literacy in hand. With education increased to level 3, we do complete the Terricoia system, which will give us some ticking positive benefit that will decay over the course of 9 years, where we will maintain some of our education access, but we're expecting to see our literacy rate to start to fall over time. But by completing this, we no longer are suffering the penalty where we get minus 10% research speed, I think was the penalty, but it is significant enough, and it's not worth the additional literacy you get from the journal entry. We get a nice little event here, which will allow us to get minus decree cost. Now, this isn't going to save us the most money, but it will allow us to have to drop one fewer decree, because we do want to shuffle things around a little bit. We're going to take a look at our decrees, and we are promoting social mobility in a whole bunch of spots. We're going to pull up on 2 of these. I think these are the 2 lowest population states, and we are instead going to put one in on Beijing, and we will do what we have been waiting to do, which is we have gotten the tech for increased... needed to do that. We have gotten the tech for standardized filing system. We've been kind of sitting on it because we haven't needed the bureaucracy, but now we are going to kick up on it and be able to incorporate Beijing. Now, we're going to need a few more bureaucracy, but this will be fine, and Beijing will be incorporating. We do have a little bit of a problem in Beijing in the terms of we cannot get our pops to employ up the government buildings. Same in Shaanxi, and the real crux of this issue is while they have 50 approval, here, let's find a pop here. While they have, a base acceptance of plus 50, none of them are accepted to that degree because they are all of the wrong religion. And in order for them to convert to the religion, in order for them to convert to Jewish, there needs to be some presence of Jewish here, but there is not. So we got to figure out a way to get one single Jewish pop to come over to Beijing, and then they will be able to start converting them. Notably, we have gotten that in North Jilin, where some Japanese pops have come on over, and they are converting the rest of the populace over to being Jewish, and so this will be able to happen. So if we take a look at Siberian, there should be some Siberian Jewish pops that are present in the place, but we need to get this in our Han pop states so that they can start employing up in government buildings. In theory, it's maybe would have been a little bit better to be on, freedom of conscience, just so that we could get guys employed up a little bit better or something like this, but we of course are doing Jewish Japan, so of course we need state religion. So sometime down the road, we will likely try and force a whole ton of pops into Beijing by depeasanting it really, really, really hard, putting in a migration decree, and hoping that one Japanese Jewish person comes on over and to convert everyone over in Beijing. And then once the pops in Beijing are converted, once we're starting to get Han pops, then the Han pops from Beijing, it'll be easier to get them to migrate to the rest of the Chinese states that we are looking to get. So we get our first mandate, and if we were having a problem with mandate generation or a lack of cohesion, we would probably go Divine Economics 2, or we would be a little bit inclined to, because this would boost it on 2 fronts, because on Divine Economics 2, we will be getting increased clergy oversight in both the financial districts and the manor houses, allowing more of these guys to be clergy, who incidentally are going to be having a positive investment pool contribution modifier that we will not be having on our industrialists, because our industrialists are bad. Our industrialists do not have the normal bonus, so actually we will be better off having more clergy ownership in terms of free money modifier, only consideration because we're still on interventionism, not on laissez-faire. But that aside, I think we're going to go for the good old trusty, the good old reliable construction one for 10% state construction efficiency. Really, really strong for a single point. But after this, we will be looking to go food standardization 3. We still have a ton of peasants, and the increased standard of living is going to be good for keeping the pops, the increased agricultural throughput is going to be really good while we have that amount of peasants, because it's going to apply to all the subsistence farms and the minus 10% mortality. This will help stack with also the minus 10% that we are getting off of the best revenge, the minus 5% we're getting off the best revenge. And coming on up, we are researching pharmaceuticals so that we can go public health insurance, so we can get further minus mortality for a total of, if we stack this all the way up to level 4, minus 20%, minus 30%, minus 35% mortality, which is going to be fantastic for us, and plus a bunch of standard of living, which is going to really allow us to keep the high taxes cranked, although right now we have to keep them a little bit lower, mostly because we need to stay above this 50% or 50 legitimacy in order to keep a ticking on the honorable restoration. We're about the third the way there on the ticking, mainly just chilling. While I don't think it will eventually hit 100%, literacy is still creeping up slightly before it'll come back down as a result of integrating Terioka having a decay of education access. We're currently at relative to what we had before we popped this, we're currently at plus 26% education access, where we have 10% from our institution and then an additional 16% from here. But what Terioka was giving us before was 25% education access base for everyone, but also 20% for peasants. And so what it's doing is it's pulling up all the non-peasant literacy in order to get us to this 96.9 figure. But this is probably, roughly speaking, going to be the peak for us here in Japan. So we here get our first kind of opportunity for a decent investment rights agreement with Prussia. They're offering this to us. We, of course, will say yes. Now, I don't think this is good in the abstract, but what will happen is we will own less of our GDP and we will own some Prussian GDP. And there's a few things we can lean into, namely the fact that we have high wages or paying higher wages in some spots makes it so that if they buy this building and pay 1/3 the price of the building for this building, but 3/4 of the value is stuck in our market, then in some sense this is a win for us. But the problem is that if we're extracting primarily at the site of the dividends, the fact that these wages are juicing up buy orders for consumer goods means that the consumer goods get more profitable and they're going to get passed around. But eventually the buck stops with us extracting money from the wealthy class. So I think that this strategy might not work, but we're going to lean into it and we're going to try it. We're extracting money at the site of the wealthiest kind of pops, but I think that what we'll do is we will not go on to graduated taxation this run. If we have a bunch of our buildings owned overseas and they are allowing us to employ up a lot of pops and pay high wages, then I think we really want to be hitting this income tax revenue. So I think proportional is probably going to be our long-term solution. And if Prussia buys a building such as these logging camps, this we're actually super delighted on, because 75% of the building's value is in the wages, and so they will take this off our hands for 1/3 the price of the building, and this is going to be, roughly speaking, a win for us as things go along. We are keeping an eye on maybe being able to get this with France as well, the mutual agreement. And then on the flip side is if we take a look overseas at some of their buildings, although maybe a logging camp would be more fair for us to take a look at, we will see that proportionally they are paying way more to, actually the ratio is about the same, just kidding, they still have wages. I think that they're relatively discriminatory, and this is why. Or the building's not that profitable. Yeah, national supremacy and freedom of conscience, they are a similar discrimination level, so it'll be a little bit more like a tradesies. Their logging camps are also, 3/4 wages, 1/4 balance. But importantly, logging camps are critical because they cost such little construction. They're very, very good for depeasanting pops, and so they have value in this way. So we have for some time wanting to be grabbing Hebei, but one of the problems is Russia has looked like they would side against us the entire time, and we don't want to get locked down in a war for a very long time because this is going to hurt our progress for the honorable restoration. However, now Russia's a little bit occupied, so this is going to be good for us because they will be less likely to want to join against us for Hebei. They also have claims on us in Jilin, so we do have to be a little bit careful, and this will kick us up over kind of this threshold here of this 25, but it is timely that we be able to get this in right now and annex these guys super, super fast. The faster we can annex these guys, the faster we can get to ticking up and continuing on the honorable restoration. Got about 1/3 of the progress bar to go. We support unconditionally the French Empire in a play in order to bring them up from cooperative to genial so that we can get this trade or investment agreement with France. Incidentally, when we build overseas in their country, we will often be able to benefit from their industrialists if their industrialists are happy, because if we take a look, their industrialists do have a very special bonus of extra state construction efficiency, and this applies when we are building overseas in their country using our construction. So in terms of countries that you would want to get an investment agreement with, or a mutual one with, France is pretty high on the list. So we will, at the end of this month, complete the Honorable Restoration journal entry, or at least unlock our next 3 objectives, and we will get the Kome Restoration, which is of course fantastic. Wait, what's this? What's this? What happened to our flag here?
How'd that get in there?
So with the Kome restoration, we will have 3 further objectives. We'll choose the Industrialist track rather than the Intelligentsia track, because the Intelligentsia is at odds with the religious bloc, with the devout, and so we will get our additional objectives. I think one of these is just getting recognition. We already have that. We will have Industrialized Japan. A little surprised that we don't have that. It looks like we might have 10 eligible states. It's 4 incorporated states. I'm wondering if it's counting specifically stuff that we are working on incorporating, but have not yet finished. In either rate, we did stack a little bit more because we knew we would need 5 urban centers. We have a little bit more in the queue, or a level 5 urban center in Shikoku, so this should kick us over the edge. And then retire the samurai. We need to get the samurai out of government, and also swap these over to all using no organized training, or not having no organized training, which should be fairly straightforward. And so it's mainly us just getting through the construction here, and we will have a full restoration. So we unlock an additional mandate here, and unfortunately we do not have an additional block slot or mandate slot because we are not in the top 5 blocks, and we're not even number 6. We're not even especially close to being in. So if we were close, we would hold on to this mandate because we want to be going for food standardization, but instead we'll go for divine economics 2, which I think is solid enough, which will give us increased clergy oversight for the financial districts in manor houses, allow us to use clergy. The clergy will have a strong, solid investment pool contribution percentage of, I think, 20%, but on top of that, we are going to be getting from them an additional 25 efficiency, so this is going to be a free money modifier, and this is going to be nice, and it is going to allow us to pump up our guys quite a bit, and we will also be generating mandate more consistently throughout, and so we will be on increased clergy oversight here, and we will be on clergy oversight here. Didn't it say increased clergy oversight in terms of... Said we got a PM, but we don't get a PM. This is just the base clergy oversight. It's not even increased. Terrible. Always read the fine print. I didn't see that we needed a railway, so this took a little bit longer than anticipated, but we have this railway about to complete to give us industrialization of Japan. We also changed over the buildings on the barracks so that we have no organized training. We do love the double no, so we will complete the second aspect here. Industrialized Japan is through, and now all that remains is to take the samurai out of government, and we will have a full and healthy restoration complete. I do believe we get an event on either the samurai or on this. It looks like we didn't, so we will go ahead and slot out these guys. We'll slot them back in most likely, but this is just to complete retire the samurai, and with it the entirety of the fall of, or renewal of Japan. Yikes, not the fall of Japan. For the samurai, I think we will want them to lose the Bakufu ideology. They lose it either way. We can make them radicalized, or we could do this. Minus military research speed. We'll take the minus military research speed. Not a big deal. And we will get a renewed Japan here. We will can either do the Empire will rise, which we will, which will give us, incidentally, it will counteract the research speed a little bit. We could choose influence in this sort of thing, or we could choose railway building throughput, but what we really want, is Korean claims, which are going to be very easy to harvest because Korea is independent. They're a strong independent nation, except they're not, and they are completely free of Great Qing, so we won't have to fight Great Qing in order to fight Korea, although to be fair, we probably could rumble with Great Qing here. We do have a bigger army power projection. That's it for this episode. We enacted our own personal Fugu plan and did the restoration, bringing back the empire here of Japan, which will be big and powerful. I think next episode is going to be a semi-episode / semi-tutorial on why peasanting is so important, and then after that, we will be going after Manchuria and Korea as part of creating a greater Japanese empire here. And also probably Qing look to dominate this coastline in general, kind of play a little bit themey, and look to expand in these various areas. For those of you who are interested, we will be streaming the release of Civilization 7 on February 6th and the 11th pretty much all day on both Twitch and on the YouTube. You can check that out. And other than that, if you like this episode, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm thing, hit the notification bell. And other than that, if you've been sitting here this entire time, probably actually take a walk, get up and stretch, do this type of stuff, good for your health. Don't just watch the next video. And other than that, have a good day.